On tonight's episode of Mr. Norris's In Case You Missed It, we look at the Bill of Rights, focusing on Amendments 1 through 5, some of the wonderful things that they provide you, and some of the issues and debates surrounding them. Hey, hi, hello, and what is up, everybody? It's your host, Mr. Norris, the history teacher with the good hair. And today we're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments added to the Constitution. And basically, they are a list of guaranteed citizen rights that the government cannot take from you. In this video, we're going to focus on amendments number 1 through 5. And then in a later video, I will go through 6 through 10, as they can get a bit long, a bit meaty, a lot of information here. So we're going to stick with the first 5. First and foremost, let's just talk about why the Bill of Rights were even added to the Constitution. After the Constitutional Convention, there were two sides that emerged and debated over the Constitution and the document and whether or not it was good enough. You had the Federalists, who really liked the Constitution as was and thought that it was a good document that should be ratified by the states and passed. And then there was a group called the Anti-Federalists, and they felt that while the Constitution was okay, it had one major flaw, and that was a list of guaranteed citizen rights that the government could not take away from you. Federalists said, well, that's implied in the Constitution. You don't need that list. And Anti-Federalists said, no, we would like that list. Eventually, it gets added to the Constitution, and all 13 states eventually, after a few years, accept the Bill of Rights, ratify the Constitution, and it becomes law of the land. So that's why we have it. And those are the first 10 amendments out of 27 eventual amendments that get passed. All right, let's start with amendment number 1. And it's what most people deem to be our most sacred right as Americans, the most important right that we have as citizens, and that is freedom of speech. However, the First Amendment gives you a lot more rights and guarantees you a lot more freedoms than most people even know. It gives you the right of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and the right to assemble and protest the government. And we're going to break down all of those things one at a time. Let's start with freedom of speech. Basically, in this country, you are allowed to believe and say almost anything that you want, share any opinion you want, with some limitations that we'll get into in a second. You can express yourself freely, and that is an amazing thing that we have in this country, as not every country can say that even today. You can criticize the government. You can bash the president, regardless of who they are. That's okay. That's allowed. You can give your thoughts. You can say that you don't think certain politicians are good. That's fine. You're allowed to. You can say things like that the New York Giants are a good football team. I strongly disagree with you, but that's okay. You're allowed to say it. It's your opinion. Here are some limitations on freedom of speech. You can't create social chaos. You can't threaten people. So you couldn't threaten a politician or a public official. You couldn't threaten an average citizen. You couldn't go inside of a movie theater and yell fire and make everybody run outside of the movie theater and say, just kidding, First Amendment. That's not allowed. You would go to jail for that. So there's limitations as far as social chaos goes. Other things, you can't just go out in the middle of Main Street in your hometown and say, hey, everyone, would you like to hear every single curse that I know? That's not allowed. You'd be disrupting public order. All right, and there's some laws that police officers and municipalities have passed that you would probably get in trouble for if you did stuff like that. So there are certain limitations, and you can look up more of them. You can almost say anything that you want, with a few exceptions that kind of keep from us all having social chaos. Okay, freedom of the press. Basically, our founding fathers believed that it was very important for the press or the news in this country to be able to report freely and report whatever they wanted to. They can dig into government scandals. They can criticize politicians and things that people in our political system do. That's perfectly within their rights. Some things that the press cannot do. They can't lie. They can't slander a certain politician or lie about things going on. They're not supposed to be doing that. They have to report the truth, or they're supposed to be reporting the truth. They can't be reporting any fake news. That's supposed to be illegal. Other things that the press cannot do, they can't give away government defense secrets to the enemy. Obviously, that wouldn't be good. But for the most part, our founding fathers believe that a free and independent press is supposed to keep politicians and our government in line. And that's why they wanted that. Next thing, freedom of religion. Our founding fathers believe that in this country, you can believe anything that you want to. And a lot of these things, a lot of these amendments stem back to things that happened to us under the rule of Great Britain and things that we didn't quite appreciate. For instance, back then, people couldn't really speak up against the government. You could get in trouble for that. As far as freedom of religion, back then you had to follow whatever the Anglican Church wanted you to follow. And a lot of our founding fathers and colonists of that time didn't appreciate that. They didn't want to worship English views or English views on religion. They wanted to follow their own suit. So in this country, they established that there is freedom of religion. You can believe anything you want. You can be Jewish, you can be Christian, you can be Roman Catholic, you can be Muslim, you can be Buddhist. You can worship a flying spaghetti monster in the sky and say Ramen, and that is quite all right. That's fine here. Last but not least, you have the right to assemble and protest the government. And a lot of people think like, wow, I can't believe that's right. It is. Think about it. When the early colonists in the early United States overthrew British rule and all of their unfair practices, taxes, and laws, protest was a huge part of that, gathering, organizing, and, voicing their opinions and voicing their displeasure with the government was a big part of overthrowing Great Britain. And they wanted to keep that going. In this country, we have the right to gather and protest the government. However, it needs to be done peacefully. It needs to be done on public property. And most of the times in most towns, municipalities, most states, you need a permit. So there are certain boundaries that you have to follow. You can't protest on private property. I can't go down to McDonald's, which is a private property, a business, and lead a protest to bring the McRib back, although it is delicious. I can't do that, right? It's private property. I don't have their permission. I can't do it. But on public property, if I follow the correct steps, get a permit, and have a protest, I'm well within my rights to do that. It has to be peaceful, however. You cannot say, I'm angry and I don't care who knows it. Let's tip something over and light it on fire. That's not a legal protest in this country. You can peacefully protest. Let's move on to the Second Amendment, and that is the people's right to keep and bear arms. Yes, you heard me correctly. That is people's rights to be half man, half bear, some kind of mutant beast. Just kidding. It's people's rights to own a weapon to defend themselves. The government says that the people have the right to bear arms, and that will not be infringed upon. And basically, the reason the Second Amendment was put in place by our founding fathers, if you think back to the Revolution, one of the reasons that we were able to so effectively defend ourselves from the British during the Revolutionary War was that a lot of the people were armed and they had already formed state militias and were very quickly able to gather and fight off the British. Our founding fathers wanted to keep that going in order to try and fight the government if it ever became tyrannical again. That was their thought process, that people should be able to defend themselves from an overbearing government. Nowadays, there's a lot of debate when it goes into the Second Amendment. If you read all of the Second Amendment, it does also say that people have the right to defend themselves using a well-regulated militia. So there are people that say maybe they didn't mean for every single citizen to have a gun. Maybe they meant the militia or the army. And then there's other people that say, no, they did mean for every citizen to have their gun. But then there's people that say, well, back then they had muskets. Now they have assault rifles. And now people on the other side will say, yeah, but they have weapons to defend themselves. And if you take that away from law-abiding citizens, then only criminals have weapons. So it is an ongoing debate. I will now give you my own thoughts on the Second Amendment. And in conclusion, that is why we either make it a law that every citizen needs to carry a flamethrower, or we make it a law that you can only defend yourself via dance battle. Geez, it's not that hard. God, I'm just kidding. You make up your own mind about the Second Amendment, but it is a debate that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's move on to the Third Amendment. If you remember learning about events leading up to the Revolutionary War, you should remember Great Britain passing the Quartering Act, which said that British soldiers coming over to the colonies in order to maintain order had to be housed and taken care of by colonists kind of against their will. After the Revolutionary War and we form our own government, our founding fathers realized just how amazingly unfair that is. So they passed the Third Amendment. Think of the Third Amendment as the anti-Quartering Act. It says that citizens in this country cannot be forced to house and take care of soldiers. The government needs to be responsible for that. Pretty simple. The Fourth Amendment. Now, amendments number 4 through 8 have to do with citizens' rights during either a criminal investigation, their trial, or what happens afterwards. The Fourth Amendment has to do with your rights as somebody underneath a criminal investigation. The Fourth Amendment protects you from illegal searches and seizures. Now, here's where this amendment comes from. Pre-America, when we were still under British control, if Great Britain suspected a colonist of being a smuggler or smuggling goods inside of the country in order to avoid their taxes and unfair laws, they could simply just board that person's ship, take their goods, take their ship, search their homes. And a lot of people in America thought that that was insanely unfair. So our founding fathers decided, again, to make an amendment against that. The Fourth Amendment protects you from all that, protects you from illegal searches and seizures. If the government or law enforcement wants to search either you or your property, they need either two things. They either need a warrant or probable cause, and I'll explain both of those. A warrant is when law enforcement conducts an investigation and they have reason to believe that you are more than likely committing a crime. They've staked you out, they've looked into your business transactions, they've taken eyewitness testimony. They have reason to believe that you are committing a crime. And once they have that evidence, they go to a judge and he writes up a document called a warrant, gives it to the officers. They can go out to your premises, your home, show it to you. Now they have the right to search your property and search your person. Okay. The other thing, probable cause, that's basically if law enforcement or the government witnesses you committing a crime. All right. So if you're out in the middle of the street and they witness you, let's say, selling an illegal substance, they have every right to then move on you, detain you, arrest you, search you, because they literally just saw you, right? That's probable cause. You gave them a pretty good reason. Even let's say you sold that illegal substance out in the middle of the street and then ran inside your house before the police grabbed you, they can still come right on in because you gave them probable cause. So, you can't run inside and be like, who is it? You need a warrant, because you'd probably be going to jail, right? So it does protect you from illegal searches and seizures. Police officers need warrants or, like I said, a good cause, probable cause. All right, we're in the home stretch. Let's go on to the Fifth Amendment, which basically is your rights as an accused person. So once a criminal investigation has concluded and police officers have now moved on to detaining you or possibly arresting you, the Fifth Amendment grants you the right of due process of law, meaning that you have to go through all the steps, the proper steps, until police officers can prove that you are guilty. You need a lawyer, you need your day in court with a judge and a jury, and we'll learn about all that more in our next video. But you go through due process. Basically, in the field, law enforcement officers can't be judge, jury, and executioner. They can't say, I think this guy's guilty, let's take him out. No, that's not allowed. That's not how this works. Some of the things that the Fifth Amendment grants you, if you ask the police officers, they need to tell you why you're being arrested. They can't say, shh, don't worry about it, you'll find out later. They need to tell you. The other thing, they need to read you your rights. If you've ever watched Law and Order and you see the police officers on that show say, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, blah, 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 blah. They need to tell you all of that stuff, the rights that you have the right to an attorney, that you have the right to have your day in court, all of that good stuff. Another very important thing that the Fifth Amendment grants you or protects you from is that you do not have to testify against yourself. In this country, you are presumed innocent until you are proven guilty, but you do not have to prove that you are guilty. That is law enforcement's job. They have to prove that you are guilty. So once you are detained and police officers question you, you don't really have to answer any of the questions. Other than identifying yourself and simple things like that, you don't have to self-incriminate. You don't have to tell them information that's going to make you seem or look guilty. If police officers ask you questions, and you might have seen this in a law show or in a movie before, you can say, I plead the Fifth, or I plead the Fifth Amendment. Now, if you answer all of their questions by saying, I plead the Fifth, is that going to make you look really guilty? Yeah. It's better than being in a jail cell, though, right? Wait for your day in court, and then you can properly argue for yourself about whether or not you're innocent, okay? Last thing that the Fifth Amendment protects you from is called double jeopardy. And basically that means that law enforcement can accuse you or charge you of the same crime more than once. It's also a very underrated flick starring Ashley Judd. If you're of age, please go watch it. It's wonderful. But basically, if law enforcement has it out for you, let's say, and they accuse you and bring up charges that you stole a car, and then you go through the whole process and you are found not guilty, those law enforcement officers can't say, you know what? I still don't like this guy. Let's charge him again for stealing that car. No, that whole case is over with. You've already been found not guilty. All right, so they can't charge you for this same crime. Now, if 2 months down the line, you actually do steal a car and they arrest you, can they charge you for that? Yeah. It's not like once you've been found not guilty one time, you get a get out of jail free card for the rest of your life. No. That's not how it works. All right. But the Fifth Amendment are your rights as an accused person. And there you have it. That's Amendments 1 through 5 of the Bill of Rights. Sorry about the length of the video. I know that it's a little bit long. But guys, this is some important stuff. These are your rights as a citizen. Learn them. I hope that you liked the video. Please like, comment, or subscribe if you did. Remember that history is life. And in the words of George Washington, the surest basis for public happiness is knowledge. So go out there and get some. Have a good night, everybody.